What is your 2 to 5 year goal regarding Tai Chi?
My goal in the next 2 to 5 years is to, first of all, get certified in level 2 and continue on and study level 3, and to build a very strong Tai Chi club here in the San Antonio area. That I'd like to see the club have about 40 members. That's about my goal, 40 to 50 members.
And you guys are 2 hours from Houston?
3 hours from Houston.
3 hours from Houston.
Yes, and an hour from Austin.
From where?
From Austin.
What is that?
Austin, Texas?
Oh, Austin.
Yes.
Okay, I was hearing you wrong.
Okay.
Yeah, so an hour from Austin. So cool. Yeah. Cool. Okay. What are your long-term goals regarding Tai Chi?
Well, I'm looking at maximizing my potential as a human being. Okay. I want to enhance my physical, mental, and spiritual health. Okay. And I want to assist anybody else on that journey. That's my
Welcome to the club.
Yes.
So to speak.
Yes.
I think that's really the vehicle that Tai Chi really is encapsulated. It's what you just said.
Mhm.
So yeah. Cool. What about clear Tai Chi is the most appealing to you, i.e., why is this the path for you to achieve your goals?
Wow. And I've talked to a lot of people about this because they'll ask me, why clear? And if they're willing to listen, and some of them are, I tell them that you teach systematically, that it's not, I've had so many teachers where it's like, well, we're going to work on this week, or we're going to work on this week. And the longer I'm involved with your system, the more I realize that you have a building block, systematic way to get where we need to go. Okay. Also, I love the fact that I can show test. Okay. I don't have to just say I have root, and you have to go ahead and take my word for it that I have root, or take my word for it that I have the wave jing, or I have a spiral. That there's ways to physically test it. Okay.
Physically and safely.
Yes. Okay. And again, along with being systematic and having the knowledge, okay, and having a depth of knowledge, is that you're willing to share it. I have found some people that I know are extremely high level, and some will hide it from me and say, no, I don't do that. And I'm like, I'm looking at you, I can feel you, I know you're doing it.
Feel you or see you doing it.
Yes. And then the other people, one person who I traveled basically an hour one way for, I guess, about 2 months, so that I could go ahead and study his Fajin. It was just phenomenal. I was watching him do all these various forms of Fajin and the Wu form that I hadn't seen in the Wu form. And then finally got to talk to some of his senior students while we're hanging out after class. And they said, oh, master says there's no such thing. And so then I waited after class and helped him carry his gear out to the car. I said, I talked to your students about this, and I see you doing it. And he goes, that's just for my family. I don't teach it to outside people. And I'm like, 2 months wasted.
Well, not 2 months wasted if you learn some things, but unfortunately going to be a dead end, because the only way you're going to get it is by
marrying his daughter.
Yeah.
You're right.
Yes. Yep. And you already have a great wife, so
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Cool. Anything else you want to add to anything we've asked you here or talked about or anything?
No, I've already been too verbose.
What's that?
I've already talked too much.
Oh no, you're great. I in this interview I probably talked too much. Anybody else? Anything else you want to ask him or weigh in on or anything?
I'd like to ask something. I'm sorry, Mark.
No, go ahead. just and I know Ty is very modest about a lot of it, but I'm just curious in teaching in the military and teaching for deployment or for combat with a lot of alpha guys. um, but how did you feel the different arts or the different styles of fighting and the internal or external, were you got to test it all out, pretty much real time. How did you see that stack up with the Tai Chi or with the different arts?
Actually, that's a really something I probably should have brought up because I'm very, very proud of it, is that I was not a tear you down and make you do it my way person. It's like, what do you got? Show me what you've got. Are you a boxer? Are you a wrestler? Did you do Shotokan? Did you do this or did you do that? Let me see what you've got. And then I'd show them, okay, this will work in combat if you do it this way, if you improve it this way, if you make sure that you're using your whole body, otherwise you're going to be exhausted when you haven't eaten or slept for 3 days, because you're not going to have that physical strength available, or you can just do it all with your arm strength. You're not going to be in a trench at the elbow and the Gulf War where you're stacked up bodies and you're knee deep in mud and blood. You're not going to be throwing a roundhouse kick to the head. So quite often I'm like, okay, this is what you've got. Let's tweak it for when you're on the battlefield, and let's improve what you've got and maybe even teach what you've got to the rest of the guys because it's valuable. I never said, hey, no, forget that. You got to do this. Does that answer your question, Joe?
Yeah, and it's it's always good. You always add things to the toolbox, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah.
The old carpenter is never going to throw away a tool.
Yeah. And and you go ahead and sharpen up that chisel.
Yeah.
Don't take a rusty, dull chisel. Go ahead and sharpen it up.
Here's a question about that, if I may. So when you got a guy that you're working with, that like the description you gave there, did you find typically that it was easier to teach them? And I don't know how much internal kind of things you had at the time, so the question may end up being based on you didn't really have that at that point in time. But here's the question: did you find it was easier to teach them how to use their structure and rely on that as opposed to the musculature? Or did you find that with that crowd, it was really easier to get into the internal aspects? And I know there's a bunch of mind training that goes into the military. Were you really talking to them about mind and mindset and that kind of thing? Or was it, you're going to have to use your structure to compensate for the fact that everything else is going to want to kind of fail, including your mind at some point due to being
right.
And whatnot?
No, I really didn't approach anything from internal. I didn't even think of it being internal. But now when I think back on it, I realized like being in the moment, going ahead and have an intent to get this done in this way, as opposed to like, I'm just going to wail away. What's the intent there? I'm trying to hit him in the jaw. No, you're trying to hit 6 feet past his jaw, that sort of thing. And yes, quite often, because of my other training, I had learned that it's better to use your whole body as a unit. And that was one of the things that most of the guys didn't have. They was like, okay, I'm using a leg, I'm using an arm, no, use your whole body as a unit. That was another thing that I found with the people in the sheriff's department. It was that they weren't using their whole body to get something accomplished. They're using arm strength or whatever strength instead of using their whole body.
The older sheriffs that I've seen, older law enforcement that I've seen, where they really were like in where they're towards retirement, they're really older and they've been in a lot of fights in their career. they tend to have a pretty healthy, like really strong, whole body oriented, somewhat internal punch where they can hit somebody and usually knock them out. Seen it done a lot by an old guy. Looked like he was going to get creamed because the other dude was big and young and strong and crazy and mad and all this stuff. And he just tapped him once. Pow! Dude went down hard and fast. And it was. And
why do you think the old guy survived?
What's that?
Why did the old guy survive?
Well, my point being is that it developed. Obviously he could have been maybe he was old enough too, some kind of high level degree black belt and a law enforcement. But my impression was, dude had just been in so many fights over so many years that he just developed that old man way of approaching things that gave him a hit that was, what his hit was.
Well, it's like with Ting. I had a great deal of Ting before I even knew about it, the training involved in martial arts because of being on the battlefield.
Yeah.
And so it developed over time. Nobody taught it to me.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and that's one of the things too, that ideally, if you were looking, because you're at 6 military bases, I would say that if you did something where you taught people, once they've got PTSD and they're freaked out, now you got to do other kinds of things.
Mm-hmm.
But if they got people before they got to that point, taught them about heightened awareness and sensitivity, and then how to manage your mind and your emotions and what you're getting on that sensitivity, what you're sensing and how it's feeling and and how you're processing that and all that stuff. It could actually be structured in a way that would require good curriculum to do it, where when they hit the battlefield level where that all jacks up to its maximum, that it's not such an overwhelming, untrained for effect. If you follow what I'm saying.
It's like, because that was part of my PTSD, as I couldn't turn that off.
That's right. Well, because you had done no kind of training in a way that was about modulating that in different, both expanding it and pulling it in. Mm-hmm. And so then when it turns on, it's like you say, it kind of gets stuck.
Yeah.
And that's going to create a lot of problems for anybody, let alone somebody that's been in a combat situation, or that has the other things that come along with having been in a combat situation like that. Yeah. Cool, man. Cool. Anybody else? Anything else?
I think Mark had something.
Yeah, I had a question for you, and I guess it has to do a little bit with you describing that you already had like a sense of Ting before knowing what Ting was. Yeah. That the first time I worked with you, I think it was a fighting workshop. That kind of blew me away. You analyzed something I was doing, I think, and I don't remember what we were supposed to be doing, but you're like, wow, you got a good spiral there to your hip. And I didn't even know I was doing it. So you pointed it out. I wasn't even conscious of it. Mm. And what I was going to ask you in relation to that, though, is when I was younger and I was teaching jujitsu, I went to a chiropractor because I was pretty twisted up over the years with injuries. And when he realigned me, when he snapped everything in place and I was straight, before he straightened me, I was virtually immovable by my students. The day after he snapped me, all of a sudden it was like I was off kilter. People could move me easily for a while. It was like I had adapted to the wrong way, like my body being wrong.
Body adjusted that,
yeah. And when I got adjusted, there was like a little bit of a learning curve to get that understand the equilibrium. Have you found that much with your physical therapy when you get those pops?
Oh yes, very much so. Very much so.
What are they doing to help protect you so that when you're in that process of I'm not used to this and I'm having to reorientate to what ideally is correct, that you don't end up with an injury that has to do with a collapse or a misstructuring with weight bearing happening? I'm not wording this very well. Because of not being used to that yet, because you haven't adjusted to it yet.
Yeah, well, basically is being aware of it is what they're, making me be very aware of these things.
Don't be in a hurry.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, okay.
and that they want me not to stay away from drinking and stay away from any sort of suppressants, even to stay away from pain meds, because then I won't be aware of what's going on.
Right, which means if you miss a line and you don't know until and by the time you feel pain, that was the dummy light came on, and then problems happened, and it's too late.
Yes.
Yeah.
Mark,
Yep.
did I answer your question?
So I guess I was going to ask you one more, like to expand it a little bit, just
Okay.
a little bit, same kind of idea. So when you have your pop, and then all of a sudden everything's maybe a little off, are you adapting before the next kind of big adjustment, or is it such a gradual change that?
It is a gradual change. In fact, like with the brace, they don't want me to make, I think it's like a millimeter change on the brace every week. And like the first week was 2 hours, then 4 hours with the brace, then 6 hours, then 8 hours. And so everything is gradual.
So are you able to adapt to that and stay in sync with it, or are you a little bit behind? Like,
Usually I'm a little bit behind, but it usually takes me about maybe an hour or so afterwards. And then I'm like, oh, okay, here we go.
That's pretty good. An hour is a pretty good,
Yes.
for adaptability, that's pretty fast. That's
Mhm.
good. Would you say the ting helps then, the sensitivity?
No, I wouldn't say with that. No, but what does help is standing Wu Chi. Having stood in Wu Chi and trying to find the correct structure helps, because even now it's like today they wore me out and they had me standing on this balance equipment, and it's like, okay, I can, as long as I stand in Wu Chi, close my eyes, turn my head the way they want me to, I'm not going to go flying, but I had to go ahead and make sure that my alignment was correct.
So tell me if this is wrong, but what I'm hearing you say is that you have to be in the alignment and trust that alignment for a minute until your ting, because it's measuring something that was over here and now it's over here.
Yes.
And you have to get into that and go, I'm going to hold this. I'm going to have to trust this and hold this, and then let your ting get to where it can perceive it.
Yeah.
Because right now, if you listen to ting, what you think is the ting, but it's not actually the ting, it's what you're used to.
Mm-hmm.
What you're used to ting is wrong, and you've got to recalibrate. And so if you listen to that ting, you're going to go back into that bad position because it's programmed in to be in that position.
And in fact,
trust the posture long enough for the ting to come online for this is where that's supposed to be, which normally takes 2 to 3 weeks of consistent.
And it wasn't, and it's not just being in the Wu Chi position, but when a physical therapist would give me instructions and my mind would leave my body and go to what they were saying, it would mess me up. I have to bring myself back into myself. And then I could go ahead and get realigned. I could not let my mind
Are
go
you
to
using
somebody.
Zhongding at that ting to inform your Zhongding at that point, or are you just trying your best to stand there and having to wait for the ting to get?
No, I'm using Ting, Zhongding, Sung, all of it to realign it, and my mind has to be in the moment. And if my mind was no longer in the moment and started listening to what somebody else was saying, then I'd fall out of the moment.
Yeah. And it's because there's not a frame of reference. The frame of reference, let me rephrase that. The frame of reference is this other thing, not what he's trying to get going on now. And so he has to do it that way, trying to get the ting on, but literally having to build the position and then being able to ting from that place. So it's kind of like if you were used to having something you're looking at from a certain vantage point and really being able to see it, and then they change their whole vantage point. If you're at first you're like having to look around and adjust and higher and lower and around the corner and everything else to find that right place where you can really see it. And you don't find it. It's not like the other one. If it's a spot you always go to, there's a spot I always go to, boom, it's right there. On that new spot, you're not going to have an automatic like that. You're going to have to find it.
Yeah.
And so you're tinging to find it.
Mm-hmm.
But you can't ting that the actual placement yet because you don't know what it is yet. You don't know in here what it is yet.
Mm-hmm.
So cool.
I have a question on a totally different track.
Okay.
So you did ninjutsu for quite a number of years.
Yes.
And can you talk a little about how it contributed or how it integrated with other systems, particularly with Tai Chi?
No, in fact, I was recommended after I got my Godan to either go to Tai Chi or to Bagua. And that's quite often Hatsumi will do that. He will say, take a year and go and study this. And I was very mechanical and rigid in my ninjutsu. And I could not make that leap, that smoothness that I was seeing the senior guys do. And I'm like, and the Tai Chi gave me that smoothness that I didn't
Okay.
have. Yes.
So, but the ninjutsu was that a major benefit for your Tai Chi training?
Sometimes whenever we do anything that is combat related, yes,
Okay.
it definitely is. I'm definitely not afraid of being hit. I'm definitely not afraid of being put in a joint lock or thrown to the ground or anything of that nature. Actually, I usually try to turn off as much of my ninjutsu as possible when I'm training with Tai Chi people, especially junior Tai Chi people.
Because?
Um,
It'll be too harsh.
yeah, and also
Not ready
it's,
for it.
yeah, a lot of it's deceit that I'm going to play a mind game with you, and even if it's as simple as snapping my fingers at Jim before I punch him in the face, and I'll snap a finger one place and punch him with the other hand. It's just simple mind tricks, that doesn't really help anybody's training.
Okay, that's cool.
Fun to watch. It's fun for when I'm teaching some of the higher level combat stuff for Tai Chi Chuan to have Ty and Jim and Mark there in the room, because they're all animals that all have this physical training and a lot of self-defense training, and all of them hands-on, like a really pretty good amount, of hands-on, actually using it for real in different kinds of ways. And so there's a lot of stuff that people have trouble with that they pick up on really well and really fast.
Yeah.
Cool.
That are Tai Chi things, but that normally the component, at least for most of the way that people train Tai Chi, that gets you into that impact aspect of understanding that part typically is missing. It's in the secret and the indoor and all of that, but it's not public. And even for me, our first year up, you're not getting a whole lot of that, because normally, for our regular curriculum, because we get so many people coming in for all the health stuff and all the other things, and just for Tai Chi soft, gentle, and stress release, and for better health, and for hey, I want to do the whole art, but they're working on form and all these things that you can't get too awfully physical with them at that point, because they're not up for it. They're not mentally ready for that yet. They're not geared for it, and all these other things. So you've got to build them into where this is okay and they're good with it, and that it's safe, and that they get what's really going on with it, as opposed to you're just, a lot of times you take somebody in, if I get somebody that thinks of themselves as martial or they're kind of street, and I'll be like, okay. And so I'll start showing them stuff, and it's like, bam, the guy's like, holy crap, you're really hitting me. Oh no, I'm not really hitting you. This was level 1. And it's like, okay, you thought you were a tough guy, but we're gonna have to build you in. So I'm gonna have to cut it down to a fraction of that and then build you up, because because otherwise they're like, oh, okay, well, bam. And it's like, that's not quite what, they're very about it. And it's like, that's not what's really going on. I know it seems like it to the beginner right now. But when they've been in the stuff where, especially when they've been, and again, all 3 of these guys, enough stuff that are, and probably more of you, but than those 3 specifically, where one of the things you learn in real situations is that they're very dynamic, they're very fluid, they change very rapidly from one extreme to very different extremes. And it's a lot to take in. Like if you take somebody that has no preparation for that, they're usually going to be toast. They're just, because it's going to overwhelm their mind first. they make bad decisions and bad choices and take actions that if it was just them in one-on-one, they might be okay just out of, I'm going to keep swinging until one of us goes down. And it's better than doing nothing most of the time. But you get enough dynamics going on in the situation and not so much. The one that comes to mind is being in a nightclub that was a big nightclub and having the whole place, 2 people got into it. And it was like that quick, everywhere you could see were people fighting. Chairs and everything, and boom, 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 boom. And I was dancing with a girl. It's like nobody was fighting, everybody was fighting. And I took her and myself and we went to the wall and I moved down the wall into the exit and out. But there was a lot of people on that dance floor that were going, what? And blam, chair to the head. And and even if that had happened, I would have been flowing with it, but I had been in a lot of situations before. And that's what I'm saying about these guys too. The versus the average person, they're just not ready for what that is. That mentally, it's hard to conceive of it properly. And any one of the 3 of them, particularly Ty, since it's your thing, and Jim, from different things he's been in with the law enforcement, can weigh in and give a better understanding than I'm probably giving you of just what that dynamic, how it kind of works and what happens and why the average person without some kind of real prep for it, whether that just be getting hit a bit or throwing and the hands on in these kinds of ways, it's just overwhelming is the only word that keeps coming to mind to somebody that doesn't have any kind of prep for that. And this is going to be true for Tai Chi people too, as much as there's a bunch of them out there that want you to believe the mystical chi comes out of the sky and now you have all the internal and you're God's gift to the fight. It's just not reality.
Well, that's actually the reality for Marines. We always expect to have a 10% loss on first contact. That people will get overwhelmed, they freeze, 10% loss.
Freeze or
yeah,
like the person at the bottom of the pool that said I can swim, they jumped in and they're in the middle of the water, not touching anything, doing this business, and it's like he can't swim. We put the pole in and get them. If they don't grab the pole, you got to dive in and get them. And they were just, everywhere but pulling their hands to go up. So, you had a lot of freeze, but you probably had people that would either just bolt in a direction. You've probably seen that one, or that they're doing the middle of the swimming pool thing.
Yeah.
My guess is you've seen both of those.
Yes, I have.
Mark?
I was just going to say,
I've seen both of those too, by the way. It's funny, it ain't funny, but it's funny. It's it's horrifying something bad happens to them, but to see it as long as it comes out okay, it's kind of like it's hilarious later. Anyways,
I was going to say too, I think some of it has to do with like maybe exposure, like what your level of exposure is. For example, I've had
that's
some
kind of what
level
I'm
of
getting at. But you actually,
yeah.
but the other thing is that like a lot of people are exposed to a lot of violence, maybe not how it really goes down, but on TV. And this actually creates a problem because they assume the stuff they're seeing on TV is what really goes on, and it's a whole lot more gritty, messier, nastier, has taste and smells and feelings and emotional stuff that comes into it that you can get from a video, but normally you're not going to get it anywhere near that level that reality is going to hand you pretty quick.
Yeah, real is definitely something different. I was going to say was the like, for example, I've done like sporting type stuff, that sort of violence, right?
Sure.
I've had some level like of the more like the criminal level, right? But for example, the military stuff that that Ty probably has experienced would be a whole different venue or level. You know what I mean? That maybe would be, you just don't know till you're in it, kind of,
Yeah, there's the biggest part I'll tell you about that is there's a giant difference between somebody who wants to fist fight you, kickbox you, fight you, and somebody who wants to kill you and is really trying to do it. There's just it's as different as watching TV. From watching TV to being in a fist fight to somebody who wants to flat out murder you, there's that much of a great difference between those 3 things. Ty, I'm sure you can probably add something to what I just said.
I don't know if I can add something to it. I definitely agree with you that, and that's also part of the reason why I have a hard time with sparring and doing things of that nature, I've spent so much of my time like why are we doing this? The only reason I'm supposed to be fighting you is because I'm supposed to be killing you. And so anything below that is like weird. And then when it comes to like the stuff that we've done there, it's like, I'm not going to fight stupid. I'm going to go ahead and mess with your mind and mess with who you are and go after you that way, psychologically and mentally. I'm not, if I can beat your mind, I've got everything else beat. And if I don't beat your mind, you're going to come back after me.
Yeah. The Tai Chi way of handling this is you turn up the volume slow. It's that put the frog in the pot. How do you boil a frog and not get it to jump out? If you try to dump it in boiling water, it's trying to jump out of it. You put it in and you turn up the heat real slow until it's boiling and then it gets boiled. And then that's the process, if it's properly being applied, for the most part, in the Tai Chi, is you turn it up so slow that they're really good for the as bad as it's reasonably going to get, as bad as it's going to get, you're going to live through it and be okay. And you just turn up that volume slow. The trick is a lot of people, again, a lot of people in Tai Chi don't teach, even when they have it, they don't teach that. And then the other problem is that people being in it long enough to really hit that level of exposure. And then if you have to do it quick, how do you get there? And there's some quick, fun ways to get there too, but everybody's mind, their psyche is a little different. And you get somebody in there with a wrong psychology, it could really be like Ty, I'll use you as an example and you can talk to it. I know from him and you, Mark, your personality, and then Jim's personality too, you're all different. So if I said, hey, I got to teach you to do this, I got to teach you to do this fast, I almost can't teach you guys the same way, because there's a way that I would do it that immediately comes to mind that I could do it with you and you would get really skilled really fast. If I do that with Ty, at some point, he's likely to try to break me to kill me. Like he'll flip because it's too harsh of a method. He may or may not get the idea, but it's going to trigger other things. And so ideally there's a different approach that I would get that would get him there, but without that problem. And for you, if I went that soft way, you wouldn't really be getting the idea. I'd need to give you something that's a bit harsher to get you to what it is. So and I'm just using you two as an example like that. It's going to be different.
There's two things about that. One is that definitely 5 years ago, if you came at me hard, it's like, okay, let's go. Even if you were only trying to teach me. Fortunately, I've gotten a whole lot better about it. That's why I was willing to come to that last fighting thing, because I'm like, I think my head's in the right place. Okay?
Well, between me and and Anthony, who you were learning from, and then whoever else you're working with too, that slow temperature rise has been going on to build into it. And so that's why you're okay with it.
And the second thing is that I've never heard you say that about fighting with Tai Chi before, to start it gradually. Is that when you're actually in a fight or to train it?
No, to train it. To train it. No, a fight's a fight.
Okay.
It needs to be get hands on somehow, or them hands on you, and then execute.
Okay.
And you're executing prior to contact, but execute where you're actually doing the stuff.
Because I'm like,
the reality
that fight slowly and build up the fight.
No. It's the training that has to be turn up the volume in the training slowly.
Okay.
So that way the person gets, like where we start for Tai Chi, most people as a threshold would go, you're not doing, stand up here once. So if I'm saying I want him to get used to contact, stand over here. And I'm giving him that kind of a push and that kind of a push. And I'm doing this on his head and everywhere on his body or his partner is. Okay. And then somebody looking at that and says, what are you doing? Well, I'm beginning the process of getting him so that he can fight with Tai Chi. Most people go, yeah, right. That's never going to work. And it's like, no, I said I'm starting him in the process. There's a process there. The end of that process looks like, blam, I'm trying to put him through the wall. Anybody comes in at that point where I did the beginning says, that'll never work. Somebody sees the end of that, it's going to be, oh my God, you guys are nuts. They missed the rest. In both cases, at the beginning one, they didn't see all this process that comes after. And then the end one, the one where you're shoving it like blam and you're blasting them, they didn't see all the process that came before. So they missed it. It's not a part, it's the whole process. What I'm saying is
Yes.
for different personalities and people, if it was just like a bunch of people who were 20 years old, same basic mentality, average person, nothing special or astounding in any way, no particularly harsh experiences, but not always warm and fuzzy either. Average 20-year-olds, teach them all the same way. We start talking about people with personalities and life experiences and stuff. You cannot teach them that part the same way. If they did, everybody could go and be a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt, or everybody could go and be a Muay Thai black belt and they'd be happy with it. And there's a whole lot of people that they can't do that, or they're not going to do that, or it's going to be very mentally damaging for them to try to do that from the way most of that stuff is trained. And it doesn't mean they can't get, 50% of the population or 60% or whatever to do that. They can. You guys know that. You've all trained and stuff. But there's people that come in where the teacher at some point goes, this isn't for you. Whether they're too ready to be all violent or whether they're just so soft that it's like, and then you touch them and they're crying on the floor, and every time you do it, that's all that's going to go on. You're going to have to do something with that person different than that normal training, or they're never going to get it.
Yeah.
Right. And then those are extremes I gave you, but there's other grades of that where that's still an issue. If you're looking at like a class for Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu or for a Muay Thai or whatever, there's going to be people who are outstanding at those arts, and then there's going to be people where, okay, they know some, and where the teacher, if they're going, what do you think if they have to defend their life against some animal? And they're going, I hope that never happens. And I mean, I hope that never happens because I don't know that they're going to do so good. They've got technical ability at this point, but do they have that mind? Do they have the comfort with the violence like that? No.
Sifu, you've been sharing a lot of great insights, but I would like to circle back to Ty for a minute quick before we have to wrap up.
Yep.
Ty, you said something a few minutes ago that just begged a question for me, and it was that that when you were studying the Ninpo and Hatsumi basically told you need to spend a year doing some Tai Chi to get the fluidity down so you could kind of, take your Ninpo to that next level. Obviously, you spent that year in Tai Chi, you did that work, you got that fluidity. I know from knowing you that you've got what you need there, but then you continued on and you did another 7 years of Tai Chi. You've been teaching for 5 now. What was it about the Tai Chi that you saw in that initial exposure to it that made you really want to pursue that on its own?
A couple of things. And Robert, and Robert and I have had this discussion because we are both refugees from ninjutsu. And I'm just going to come right out and say it. It's the people. Okay. Even now, once in a while, I'll have somebody will come to me and they'll say, I want to learn ninjutsu. And I talk to them a little bit and it's like, yeah, I want to be able to kill people. They have that kind of attitude. I'm like, no. I'm even hesitant to even mention it, like when we're doing this podcast, because the last time I mentioned it, I had several of the ninjutsu people come at me, and
so they watched the podcast and then contacted you after with
yes,
okay,
and to include Hatsumi. Hatsumi came to me, at a very gentle, you're welcome back, because they had problems in that I studied with Gimbukan, and I made the mistake of doing some techniques that were done the Gimbukan way. And there is great animosity between Bujinkan and Gimbukan. So a lot of the Bujinkan people were like, oh, you're a traitor, had it directed at me specifically. There's also an attitude, and not only and what happens in anything where it's considered special. Ninjutsu, by those practitioners, it's considered special.
Oh, sure.
being a reconnaissance ranger is considered special. Or like when I went to the Naval Academy, you're supposed to be special. And then therefore, if somebody who doesn't meet the criteria of society's definition of special, or somebody is considered subhuman, then you're denigrating their perception of what they're doing as being special. So I was in the very first class of integrated in the Naval Academy, and people made the assumption that I got there because of my color, not because I was a son of a Bronze Star winner, that I I lettered in several sports. I was an All-American football player. They just made, or that I aced the SAT. It's like he got here because of his color. And recon, I was the second Black person ever in recon. And they didn't know what to do with me, so they put me in the Indian platoon because there had been a history of Sioux, Apache, and Navajo. And so they put me with the Indians.
Now you do have some Native American, didn't you? Right?
Yes,
Yeah.
Cherokee, yeah. But that is something that happens more. In fact, I've never seen it happen in Tai Chi. In fact, I find especially like the Chinese teachers actually treat me a little bit better than the Caucasian students. They especially if they came up under communism, they're like, oh, here's how you deal with the police. Here's how you do this. I'm like, why are you teaching me this? You're not teaching any of the other guys this, but it's a reality. But those same sort of attitudes pop up in ninjutsu very much, especially Bujinkan. And it's not, again, it's not from Hatsumi. It's not actually from most of the senior people in ninjutsu. It's the people who are like, I'm special. I've been doing ninjutsu now for 2 years, 3 years. How is it possible that you can be here too?
Interesting.
Yes.
Yeah, I would say that most of the time when you get somebody that lasts in the art, that they got past I want to do it for killing people and those kinds of reasons a long time ago.
Yes.
But if that's why they started, they didn't stay for that, because usually people get that in any real art, they get it within the first few years there, and then they're off to something else.
Yes.
If that's all they wanted, they got what they came for.
Mm-hmm. No, and the thing is that in ninjutsu too, I was told that the first 2 years to not actually even teach anything. You teach them movement. You give them the car, but you don't let them know that you have to put gas in it.
Yeah. Well, and that's unfortunately kind of what's happened with a lot of the Tai Chi that's out there, even if they're really going to teach eventually, is that they do it for as much as 10 years easily, where they're giving them the car and no gas in it, or that they put gas in it, but then they didn't teach them how to drive the car.
Yeah.
And so it doesn't matter that it's got gas in it, or the best they can hope for is a wreck, yeah, all that.
But that was a part of the system in ninjutsu. I don't know if that's actually a verbalized, thought through idea within Tai Chi, or it just happens that way.
The Tai Chi, where they've got the indoor and the outdoor training, where I'm only going to teach my family and I'm not teaching anybody else any of the real stuff, but here I'm going to charge you a bunch of money to learn the form and treat you like you're teaching Tai Chi. That is a very known thing in the families that really have the Tai Chi. It's very codified, there's a system there that they're working from that is very spelled out within the groups themselves. They don't let other people know that very much, just like in the ninjutsu. They're not telling you that you're learning it for the first couple of years. Normally, somebody who's coming in off the street, they don't know that that's what's going on.
Yeah.
And so it's that. unfortunately. And that's what we're obviously trying to fix on the Tai Chi side. If it was all fighting and self-defense, I would be less inclined. Not that I don't want people to defend themselves. I do want people to be able to defend themselves, but like just flat out being able to kill people for the sake of, no, is where I'm at on that. But there's so much of a health component, both your body and your mind and your spirit, for yourself and for others, and the calming of the mind and the emotions, and the clarity of the mind and the emotions and the spirit and that stuff, that I just don't understand why somebody would hold that back. And I can't relate to it. To that mentality.
Mhm. Yeah, but
So Ty, I'm not sure whether I'm understanding so. So you weren't accepted within ninjutsu?
I was accepted. There are a lot of little cliques. Okay. So I was very much accepted by Hatsumi and Jack Hoban. Jack Hoban was who I got started with. And he
Okay.
was a Marine Corps lieutenant, and we had a clique of all recon Marines, and I was very much accepted in that group. And then I
Okay.
was very much accepted in the groups in Japan.
Okay.
When I came to the United States, then it was like, who are you? What makes you be able to be within our group?
Oh, wow.
Okay.
And was it just based on race? Was that the deal?
Yeah, I can't decide what's in somebody's head. I just know that I was an outsider. Okay.
Okay.
And this is because of my background and at the time what kind of shape I was in and everything else. I was basically the practice dummy. Let's see if it'll work on Ty, then it'll probably work. So everybody wanted to take their best shot at me.
Well, that part might have been because of you being in the combat, but
Yeah.
to the degree
Oh, okay. Yeah, that could be a whole different thing. Yeah.
If
Yeah.
they do it on you, it should work on most people. And if they can't do it on you, well, they got work to do.
Yeah.
It's
So like I said,
situation to be in, but I wouldn't doubt on that single part of it that wasn't something.
And that's something that I appreciate from my father is that never ever say that what motivates somebody. You can go ahead and describe their actions and what they've done, but you don't know exactly what motivates them.
Yeah. No, that's right.
Yeah.
It's I will tell you that last note here towards that end, that's one of the hardest things about discussion and discourse and disagreement in the United States today, is that a lot of people on wherever they're coming from, politically, personally, religiously, whatever, they make a lot of assumptions about the other side.
Mm-hmm.
And then argue based on that. And then
Yeah.
the other side's doing the same thing. And that is only going to beget horrific kinds of outcomes, typically.
Yeah.
And so you don't want to do that. The other one is that as a combat veteran, and I know you've seen this firsthand, there's a lot of people that go in, if they're a young kid, and they're just like, okay, you went in and you did your basic, and now go kill whoever you're supposed to go kill. It's really hard to see them as people, because it's hard for another person to kill another human being. But if you see them as the enemy who has these very specific thoughts that are evil and bad, they're not so hard to kill. I'm not saying that makes it easier. I'm saying or easy. I mean, but it makes it easier.
Yeah. No, and the military specifically does things to dehumanize the enemy. Okay, everybody is given some derogatory term for for their who they are. I'm not even going to repeat them.
No.
Yeah.
Well, and then what I found is that Thai people that have the experience and background you've got, or that spent time, what do they call it? When you're in a foreign culture and you're actually immersed in the culture for a while as part of what you're doing in the military. There's a term for that. You're basically, but you're in culture, and so you're getting to know the people
in country.
Yeah. You can't maintain that mentality.
Yeah.
For very long. because you begin to get to know people and you're going, okay, well, at least they didn't fit the mold that I thought they were. And then you meet some more people and then they didn't fit the mold of what I thought they were. And then and then at some point, for most people, not everybody, it becomes, okay, what I assumed about these people can't be correct.
No, I use that training here in Texas, and that okay, in California when the trash went out, everybody put it actually on the road. Here in Texas, everybody puts it on the driveway. Everybody, sir or ma'am. Huh. In Carolina, you turn off the lights when you are no longer willing to receive company because you've gone to bed. In Texas, you turn on all your lights when you go to bed.
Yeah.
Like, so I'm like, okay, so this is how the natives do it. All right, I watch.
And like you said, you can't assume the motivations. I like that you can tell. Yeah, it's smart advice.
Yeah.
And I think it's the bigger problem in most discourse today is that people assume the motivations of the other people.
Yes.
They're usually wrong.
Yeah, you can see and absolutely know the actions, but you can never know the motivation. You can never know whether somebody's having a bad day or someone, whatever. You don't know what
happened to them or about them or whatever their actual reason for being there is, what they want, why they want it, all that stuff. Yeah.
It's one of the greatest lessons my father's given me.
That's a good one, in my opinion. Cool. Anything, anybody else? Yep.
So actually, I was wondering, in the vein of what you were just talking about, you had mentioned earlier that you worked at a homeless shelter and you've done counseling.
No, not in a shelter, just with getting homeless off the street.
Okay, but still working with a very vulnerable population.
Yes.
Do you think that is carried over into your Tai Chi, either as a student or as a teacher?
Yes, and I don't know whether I had this before I started doing that work and I used it in the work. A chicken or the egg, I don't know which came first, but finding out what motivates the person, okay? Like I was talking about teaching internals, okay? People want to learn the internals for very different reasons. So I have to understand this person and understand what motivates them. Just like getting a homeless person off the street. 90% of the time, you will not get a homeless bed off the street if they don't feel they have a responsibility to somebody else. Like if they have a responsibility to a wife, a child, a parent, that they've got to do better so that they can help them, you've got a good chance of getting them off the street. If they don't feel a responsibility to anyone else, you can basically forget about it.
Thank you for that information. There are people that I work with where I've been trying to help them to get a better outcome for their life and really struggling with it. There are people that were friends of Chasen's, my son, and that is the problem. That what you just said is the problem.
Yeah.
They only got themselves to look at, and so they're just not motivated enough to do it.
But if people feel they have a responsibility to do something good for other people, to take care of somebody else in their life, they will try to get it together.
Yeah. Cool. Thank you.
That was a great question and a very insightful answer.
But did I answer your question?
I think so. Yeah. The main thing is, like, do you think it helped you as a student or helps you as a student?
As a student?
Those experiences working with the homeless.
Again, I go back to my statement that I'm trying to reach my own potential. I don't want to be stuck in, my glory days were when I was in recon. My glory days is when I served on embassy duty. My glory days are still ahead of me. I'm trying to move forward.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Sure.
All right. Yep, go ahead. What's that?
I was taught to teach in the Marine Corps was state what you're going to teach it, review it, and then make sure that you've answered anyone's questions by asking them. I should be restating everyone's question, but I don't do that anymore usually, but I do make sure, did I answer the question?
Actually, I will tell you that your better dialogue and conversation with me almost on anything that would be a discussion point or even learning would be that kind of a format.
Yes.
Actually restate whatever I said in your own words.
Mm-hmm.
Because a whole bunch of the time I'm going to be like, that's not what I said, or that's certainly not what I meant.
Yes.
And you may go through 5 or 10 rounds of that before you hit for what I actually just said to you. Easily.
Yeah, and I do that when I'm dealing with individuals, but in this format, we could go on for days.
Well, I was going to say, and then when you say whatever back to me, you'd actually almost be better off most of the time to ask me what I took from that. Now, sometimes the teacher, and then ideally I'm demonstrating something that you will reasonably want, I'm hoping will emulate or want to emulate, that when I restate what you said, I'll typically try to keep it to what you said, but also then I can go, what I'm hearing is, and tell you some things that you didn't really mean by that statement or question or thought or whatever it was, but that are implied by it that you maybe didn't realize, and you go, I didn't mean that. Okay, tell me what you mean. And it makes the conversation take a whole lot longer, but you come out of it with a whole different level of understanding of things than where you would without it.
Yes.
So yeah, cool.
I had one more quick question, I guess. I had meant to ask Ty this in the past, actually, and then, but it's not right on top of my mind. It slips away. So when you look at like because I've been looking at a little bit the Tai Chi approach versus the other things I've done in the past, and when you look at violence, I feel like the Tai Chi principles and the way of training, and I don't know this for sure yet because I haven't taught it long enough, but I feel like it would kind of injury proof you a little bit. I was curious, not just physical. I'm thinking more along the lines of the like when military go into combat, they try to prepare you in boot camp and stuff, but then when you get into, you'll have this extreme violence or whatever, or you'll see these very extreme things. Do you think that the Tai Chi stuff would help soldiers if they were getting it before they got into battle? And do you think it's possible in the training time that they get for simple elements of this to be integrated?
Okay. This is something that Master Ho has asked me this exact same sort of question. And why do I not teach the combat aspects of Tai Chi to the military people I deal with? Number one is that usually, okay, the most time that you have is about 24 hours total while they're in boot camp. That's all the time you've got.
Okay.
Okay. The second thing is that I always refer to as testosterone poisoning. Okay. Jim was talking about you're dealing with a bunch of young alpha males that doing it the smart way, the easy way, is not something that usually appeals to them. Okay. After they're injured and they've got to figure out how to go ahead and move forward. Yeah. But when they're, 17, or like the majority of people I've gone into led into combat were 19 years old.
Yeah.
When they're 19 years old and strong and have their testosterone poisoning, no, the Tai Chi wasn't going to help them.
I will tell you this, actually,
Yeah.
for self-defense stuff, if you give me somebody that's that old without mental issues and physically well, there are some fast ways to do it.
Well, I need them.
Yeah.
I'll pass them on.
Yeah. Okay. There are some fast ways under those circumstances to do it. It's just if you get somebody that's got, like I said, that's already a combat veteran and they've got issues, you can't do that kind of. It's going to be, they're going to wig out on it. It's going to be a problem.
All right. I look forward to learning those things.
The way for your training methods, there's obviously the one we've got that's the combat physical applications and the different ones and the different aspects and ways to approach that. That's really good to have. You did that one, and then wave, and then after that one, you start getting into the ones where it's really softer. Well, you can jump to the softer one, but with some harshness coming. But you got to have somebody that's really pretty together to handle it. And so in our system, I'm building you to that because that's just the smartest, safe way and most mentally safe is the word that comes to mind again, way to get you there.
Well, you'd be doing our country a service by putting that together.
It's easy enough. It's just you got to make sure that the people that are in it are going to be okay. Because if not, you'll have somebody going killing people. I mean, in the group, in the training, because they're going to lose their shit. They're going to lose their mind and go crazy. And so
then that's probably something that you would go ahead and give to people once they're in the recon program.
As long as they're mentally truly.
Well, yeah, they've gone through all kinds of psych evals and gone through all kinds of stressors to find out.
That's the group that you give me a day with them and I'll change their whole approach.
Yeah. So then
for fighting.
Right. That's what I'm saying. Then you want to go with recon or SEALs or Rangers where they've already been stress tested.
That's right.
Yeah.
The group that we did at the Air Force Academy was that kind of a group and they loved it. They just wanted to know more things and I needed to be there for that. And the way it worked out, that one time I couldn't be there and I really needed to be the person that was in front of me. For the people that I had sent needed training and a whole lot more years of training than what they had. They had trained specifically to teach that program.
Okay.
They didn't have any.
Yeah.
Anyways, all right, guys, lady, anything else? Anybody, any questions?
Yeah, mine is not so much a question as just I could say comment, but I could say compliment. After all this talk of, I guess you could just say violence, right? My testimony for my friendship with Ty is that he's a very generous and quick to laugh person. He's very sweet and supportive. He's a great teacher. I really loved the unit that he gave us at the Tai Chi gathering, and it was super relaxing. Just like the opposite of what you may imagine he's like after hearing this conversation. So I just wanted to throw that in there. Also,
well, I mean, think about what he said too about working with homeless off the street.
Yes, absolutely.
Doing the stuff with people that have the PTSD, doing the stuff that has to do with the healing. It is a whole art, and the violence part. And I know, like you say, he is the wonderful human being that you're talking about there.
He's very wonderful, and
Well, I was going to say for the violence part, because it is martial art, Tai Chi Chuan, it is martial art, and it's designed to protect you from that. Ideally, we would live in a world where we didn't have that problem, but that is not currently the case.
But for being someone, on the short list of the possibly most lethal people that I know that I can count on one hand, he's very, 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 very nice. And I love that you shared with us today your journey to become that peaceful warrior. And I'm so glad that you can share that light with other people. And I also want to thank you for your service.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Echo.
I got to change the name of the club from Warrior Tai Chi to Peaceful Warrior Tai Chi.
Oh yeah.
I love that.
The other one I need to promote for you here is our Clear Tai Chi International Family Gathering that we do once a year. And most of the folks on the call here and a bunch of folks that aren't on the call here come to it and teach and are there, and you get to push hands and you get to put hands on with and interact with and feel things and do things and laugh and have fun and eat good food and all that stuff. Good and healthy food. And that is to see what that is for this next year. So it's every year, first full weekend in June. Go to taichigathering.com. Thanks for listening. By the way, send comments for where we post these that way, or send us an email, and you can email either us here at headquarters directly and or any of the teachers. You know, especially if it like this week, it was Ty that we're talking to. So if you're interested about something specifically Ty Center like that, of course, you reach out directly to him. If you are just looking for Clear Tai Chi through live instruction, we've got all the instructors that are here, plus a number of others. And if you're not sure where, get with us at the head here, and we'll find the person that's closest to you and try to get you so that you can put hands on and experience some of this firsthand for yourself. And thanks for listening, and thank you, everybody. Great talk today. And I'm sure that this will end up being a two-parter based on our time frame there, but okay.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks.